Welcome to Day 9 Daily, Part 3 of episode number 518, where we learn to be a better gamer. We're about to see the conclusion of this game between White Raw and Maho. But what I want to do is I want to throw down a concept. This is something that is very exciting and can happen only when people are sufficiently good at a game. In a game like StarCraft, there's not as much room to micro or control your way out of situations. For instance, in Brood War, you'd get things like Dragoons with range versus Dragoons with not range. I don't care if you know what a Dragoon is, but if one has longer range than the other, the one with range has a bit of an edge. But if things are controlled properly, that is the only circumstance in which the ranged player can exploit his range. In StarCraft 2, there's things like Combat Shield, extra hit points, where my Marines, I don't need to do anything special, they're just way better and that sort of thing. So this is not bad, by the way. I don't want to say that this is like a fault or a flaw or something like that. It just creates a different kind of game where, for instance, chess has no execution. You can't micro your frickin' pawns better, and I think that people would agree that chess is a pretty damn good game. But what ends up happening in a game like StarCraft 2 is, especially in its young stage as it is now, people are still just doing strategies and making the right army and killing each other with the right army. The questions that people were asking early on in StarCraft 2 were things like, how do you hold off a one-base roach all-in? Sorry, my roommates are really excited about Merlin, so if you hear screaming, that's what it is. There were questions like, what is a good way to deal with a cloaked banshee and not be screwed? Those are sort of questions you'd say. It was really, really, really specific, and as time went on, there were specificer questions like, how do you hold off a 1-1-1? And that sort of thing. But what's cool is that as people start to get a sense of all the ways to hold off all the scariness that can be thrown at them, and as people get a sense of what is really quite bad and what is really quite good, concepts start to kick in. Thank God. Oh my God. That actually terrified me when StarCraft 2 first came out. In Brood War, it was so easy in dailies because there were so many concepts that you could exploit: map control, positional awareness, and at any game you could just say, well, does he have good map control? Well, no. Look at these situations. Look at his map control in this state. But like right when StarCraft 2 came out, it's like, well, he didn't build anti-air and there's a Banshee coming. So concepts are really the core of like that ultra. Everyone has crisp, refined mechanics. Everyone knows how to hold off all the attacks. What do you do now? You rely on executing your concepts better. So the concept that we're going to see right now, I am up against an immobile player. He is going mech. An immobile player. How do you take advantage of that? With excess mobility? And we're going to see White Raw do that brilliantly. Brilliantly. So first of all, from just a derp Heart of the Swarm new units derp perspective, White Raw's done a really cool thing where he has weakened up this Widow Mine, weakened up this Widow Mine, that Morrow is trying to just bring the noise with right away. Is the sound on? God. Keep not being able to hear it. There we go. I'll turn it up myself. See, that's the reason why we need to be a little bit careful with our control early on. If we stop looking, we get screwed. But White Raw has been positioning his stalkers to thwart these Widow Mines left and right, and still expands behind it. Really quite, I would describe it as quite ballsy play. But still, White Raw has successfully held off this Widow Mine push, with the exception of this one, and has done this without the use of a robotics facility, which is sweet. So he's held his ground, he's gotten up his expansion, he's going for a frickin' Oracle. Oh, yeah! What a great little play. Now, I will say Morrow does have a tendency to toy around with this notion of, you know, getting a an earlier starport for Vikings to be able to deal with this, but that's okay because oracles are pretty fast. Look at that. Move speed 3.38. Super ninja oracle. This is so brave. What a brave man. And more oracles to boot. And finally, at 7:30, researching a robotics facility. Just note all the threats that White Ra will be up against after he's seen the Widow Mine. Could have been up against Hellion, no big deal. He has the 2 gateways up at the start to be able to deal with all that crap. And now he has the Widow Mines. Okay, he's dealt with that. What threat could come right now? Almost nothing. Maybe some Marines, but tanks are going to be long behind. It's essentially only Widow Mines and or Hellions. And then this can go down. Oh, yeah. Once again, we see the Oracle doing all sorts of cool wonders. The cool wonders. So even though Mara was unable to break in, he still has those Widow Mines planted outside the front. I think Widow Mines don't have a kill counter because it just hasn't been added because they used to just self-detonate. But look at all this, like, repeat mineral shield crud. So cool. So good. So, alright. We now have White Ra starting to clear out things with these observers. Being very careful with them. Watching them quite closely. We have this Terran player here who's going to be building up a nice mech army. We have Widow Mines. It can be used defensively at the front. We have tanks. It can be used... I mean... to be tanks. They're freaking tanks. They're good units. They're great against the ground. They're good against the ground. Now, a reasonable question is, what to do next? What to do next? What are ways to exploit immobility with mobility and with expanding? That's one. However, I do like the choice of White Ra, before even adding on any extra gateways, to just go straight up for the Twilight Council for Blink. Really sweet. And once again, going up to 4 oracles like a boss. And there's the blink going down. Once again, like a boss in total boss mode. And this is what I think is super interesting. Even if our opponent was going for Marine Marauder, this is still a pretty significant dent we can put into his plans. And also, if he's going Marine Marauder, we can actually begin getting aggressive with the Mothership Core. Or hell, we could just be aggressive with our first Stalkers right at the start of the game. And do some nifty, thriftish stuff with that. There's a lot of threats that you can put on Heart of the Swarm that you couldn't put on prior. Honestly, Mothership Core plus some basic gateway units plus a Stargate on one base is putting up a ton of threats for your standard one barracks expand. I'm really excited to see the potential for people to do that. So, alright, White Ra has his blink. He has Forge. Again, a nice little mobility exploit. If it's hard for you to attack me, I may as well get my upgrades. Is he actually going for a 5th Oracle? No. Okay, I didn't miscount. He does have 4. And even with all these mines here, there still just ain't that much that can be done about it. So here's where I start to think that White Ra gets some really cool plays in. Actually, I should probably speed it up because this was going to be a bonus game. Throwing down the Entomb, delaying things up for a long time, and just swinging along the sides. This is a weird play. This is really bad against like a Zerg player to try to attack here because the more mobile Zerg can literally just run cross map and then kill off your expansion, and then you're dead. But if your opponent is just not very mobile, hit him on all sorts of sides. Imagine the way a Zerg would hit a Terran from this side. It's not bad for Zerglings to hit this other side. So all these like harassment, fast unit sort of plays from White Ra. Just looking for any vulnerability. So kick ass. And the instant they unsiege, just doing the usual exploitation. Let's speed it up. +1/+1 upgrades. A lot of gateways. Why gateways before any other high tech, because this is our biggest mobility play. And hey, look at that warp prism coming in. Blink stalkers. Literally everything is about having highly mobile stuff. Poor Hellion gets killed. Again, in the Units Lost tab, we see things looking quite bad for White Ra, and yet still, he's quite a ways ahead. All thanks to those entombs. More blanks taking every opportunity to just keep things back. And this is, if you watch Morrow, this is where Morrow tends to power up. He has this as his core formation. 2 tech lab factories, reactor starport, a reactor factory, and soon enough he'll be, oh yeah, he's also getting upgrades. But soon enough he gets the Ghost Academy and begins adding on that unit to his mixture. More Blink Stalkers at the side. What really, truly can our Terran player do about it? Other than having good defense, nothing too much. This I actually have no idea about. I have frickin' no clue if this is good or not, but damn it, it's White Ra and he's getting a Tempest. I mean, certainly in theory this is good against a mech army because it has 15 range, it can pick off siege tanks, and White Ra just expanded like a madman. Not excess defense anywhere, just a lot of pylons. Blinks in. Having the Templar available to do storm drops at any point in time, or to do warp prism antics with the usual warp image. Pretty cool. How much time do we have left? Alright, 7 minutes. Nice. 7 minutes for 12 minutes of gameplay. And all the Tempests rallied to the middle. So we're starting to see that White Ra, who's expanding into mid, by being so aggressive in literally this one portion down in the bottom right, is constantly pulling everything down into this bottom right direction, away from all his expansions. A lot of gateways powering up. And when the Vikings come in and finally kill it off, I feel like that's the moment where the average bear is like, oh, it didn't, it's failed. It's not gonna work. And this is actually where Morrow tends to start really step ahead. And this is what I describe as a momentum play. We have Morrow at 2-0 upgrades. He's finally finishing up his orbital command. He's at 64 workers. He doesn't really want that much more, and in fact, in a moment, he'll begin sacrificing them. Once this begins a planetary fortress, he's going to begin getting ghosts in large numbers. He's going to begin getting factories in large numbers. He's going to begin doing these huge, gigantic push-outs that are going to screw his opponent over. It's all a matter of time before Morrow really gets up into high gear. So what does White Ra have to do? He has to keep bashing him down, and the older logic is he needs to make the death ball. What's the death ball that he makes to be able to kill it off? But again, that's not the way that White Ra's going to play. He's going to exploit this concept of mobility versus immobility. There are 2 disparate locations, this one and this one. And our friend Morrow has to defend both. But White Ra literally just builds the basic gateway units that people love to poop on. Oh, they're so bad. Oh, gateway units are embarrassingly pathetic. Well, White Ra's going to build only those because they are mobile. And these siege tanks are not mobile. Here, look, we have some Hellbats. Wait a minute, are they really called Hellbats now? Could they have made the Firebat feel any more left out? Really? It's not a battle mode Hellion, it's a Hellbat? Oh no. Oh. That's so sad. It's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Look at that! Pokes in there and goes, oh, very well. Very well. And does one of the more brilliant tactical maneuvers of the game. He cuts in. He doesn't just attack from here, from this area. He comes over to here. So that way there will be units behind him and units in front of him. An excellent technique when you are the faster army to cut in between to do this sort of play. If for some reason this is small, you can just pull back and assault that. If for some reason this is small, you can just pull forward and attack that. And then the Storm Templar are looking good. So not the strongest army, just a lot of Zealots and Stalkers with 4 Storms. And of course, while all that was going on, expanding to a very odd location up in the top left. I say odd because ordinarily we expand in a way that reinforces our attack. And with a Protoss versus Terran matchup, we almost always are expanding close as the Protoss player, but against an immobile player, fantastic. We're going to expand cross map. We're going to attack down here. He either has to sack this and attack our top left, or he has to defend this and we get our top left expansion. And fortunately, we did both because our opponent just did not quite have a good position to begin with. And there are no Colossi here. There are not an excess of Archons. There are only 4 Templar, but this is a very mobile force. Being controlled well, and the Tempest just raining down chaos from the back. So clean, so good! Ghosts screaming in their usual excessively loud fashion. But Morrow, unfortunately, has like a billion freaking orbital commands, but White Ra knows the value of gateways. We have 10 over here. We have 6 there. We have another 8 there. That's 24 of those. That's excellent. We love 24 gateways. No extra robos. We're not going to be going for a bunch of Colossi. We're not going to be going for a bunch of Immortals, which people list down as the death ball units that deal with mech well. What White Ra's doing is he's just expanding and overwhelming at these extreme angles. Remember at the start of the game, hitting down there at the backside? Well, White Ra just moves in from another extreme angle. Gets a sense with that leading Zealot that there's really not that much there. And just hits that. And if for some reason there was a big engagement here and White Ra started to lose a lot, well, he has a pylon here. He can do a warp in of 24 Zealots and then just attack down here. He did do a warp in of 1 Zealot, which is going to be about as effective as 24. 24 gateways, you obviously cannot sustain constant production with 24 gateways. I mean, you have like 2 warp in rounds of money with 5k in the bank. But it allows you to reposition an army very quickly. Like right now, an essential question. Do we want to replenish and continue shoving here? Do we want to warp in here and go kill this expansion? Those are our questions that we're faced with. White Ra decides to blink forward after some nice storms. Oh, also note that attacking at multiple locations generally forces tanks to cluster, because you'll be like, unsiege, tanks, go, 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 and then you'll just hit the E button and they'll all be clumpered up. So White Ra realizes he has, some damage that he can apply here, but not a considerable amount. Still has these Templar here. Could very well do a warp in there. Tempests are not the greatest against Vikings. So the production tab is going to get awfully funny. Strong reactions from Morrow. And again, notice the momentum that Morrow has. I mean, I'm talking a lot on White Ra's side just because, I want to try to keep to 20-minute segments for the daily purposes, so I want to stick to just one side for now. But there were just so few threats thrown at White Ra. And this might seem like a weird place to expand. Like, why not expand there? Because this is consistent with this hitting in multiple locations. If Terran decides to push and kill this off, if it's too weak, we warp in and kill it off. If it's too strong, we just attack over here. Exploiting mobility and expansions are part of that. But, I love this game because it's really basic units. Zealots, Stalkers, Archons, but not even large numbers of Archons. And it's all just hitting the Terran player where he's weak. Minimal storms, but really effective storms. Is that not cool? I thought that that was cool. Especially how the expansions were relating to all the attacks and all that good jazz. Didn't you just make it look like really easy? Pew! Let's take some questions. Let's do that. We'll be finishing Newbie Tuesday up tomorrow. We're going to be doing a little bit of that. Pew! 5. Pew! Pew! 5. 5 questions. Throw questions at me, bras. I want questions. Doom 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 doom. Hey, doom 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 doom. Doom 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 doom. So Shiny Bobblehead says, Day 9, do you feel like turrets or spores would be a reasonable response to this kind of Oracle Entombment play? I don't actually think so, because the speed on the Oracle right now is so high. So if you build a lot of turrets, like, I'm almost thinking like back here, if you do build these turrets, if the Protoss is getting the Oracle sufficiently early, you don't want to be spending this money on the missile turrets. You want to be spending on other things. So if I'm a Protoss player and I see you build like 2 or 3 turrets by each base, I'm going to be like, damage was done. And most of the time those turrets will even be in a bad position. So I can just sort of swing around and do things like this where I can, I'm going to come back to the 10-minute mark. Yeah, I can do things like, for instance, there's nothing stopping me from flying an Oracle in this way, seeing if there's anything and starting to move down, and then entombing from this side. And if I had, like, turret, 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 like that, protecting this outer ring, I'm still not defending this. And you really don't want to have, like, a turret here and, like, a turret here. Like, 5 turrets for 1 command center. It's just a little too much. So I think that maybe, like, a turret, and then, like, staying hyper-defensive with your units and trying to zone seems reasonable. ET's quite rough. So, Sergeant Ghost 177 says the most reasonable question ever. How did Terran deal with the fast mobile army with the storm? How does Terran deal with what White Ra was throwing at him? Well, what I want to note is that if you actually look at the army value, and actually I'm going to come to the unit composition tab, a little more so, where we see like at the 10 minutes, see look at these, we have 9 tanks already. That's quite a lot. And I'm actually going to skip 4 minutes ahead, where the tank count is, you know, going up, going down, kind of having some instability to it, but we're starting to get ghosts and Vikings and tanks, and we're starting to get upgrades, and we're starting to get orbital commands. I mean, we have so many freaking orbital commands. I'm trying to make sure I have all of them. Yeah, we're going to have 7 of them, which means we can remove those. Come to the 22-minute mark, 2 minutes later. The tank count is starting to increase. The ghost count is starting to increase. In fact, all the counts of everything are starting to increase. And this is right when the Terran player is getting close to having that money-maxed army. Because in a direct engagement, if you have this army mixture up against this army mixture, it can often be just a total blowout for the Terran player. Even though the Protoss has like 40 more supply. Or, excuse me, 30 more supply. So this is a sort of momentum type situation. This is after the huge cataclysm where Terran didn't quite manage to get maxed. But again, we come back to this 100 and, or to the 26-minute mark, and the Terran is really close to like a giant death ball, 20 Hellions, 13 tanks, 4 ghosts. How on earth did the Terran player end up losing this whole army? This army should be able to just freaking destroy a Protoss player. But again, when you're not getting up into a good position with mech, the storms just deal massive damage to all the tanks, and you don't even really need to do much more than that. And even so, we did see that, like, White Ra shouldn't be getting this far ahead in the unit's loss tab. This is just credit to his always finding the weakest link. All I'm really saying is that the Terran player just needs to defend a little bit more, and when Terran loses, it looks like this, where the Protoss is hitting there, hitting there, hitting there, hitting there, hitting there, and then boom, game's over. Dead Terran. But when Terran wins, it looks like defending here, defending here, defending here, defending here. One death push, and there you go, and it's done. And people are like, oh, Terran's imbalance. Oh my god, it's so stupid. But if White Ra actually set himself up reasonably to where the way he would deal with the death ball if it came is that he would send Army Round 1 in. Then he'd have 24 gateways. He could do really fast rewarping round, hang for 30 seconds, do the second rewarping round, and then go on for round 2. That's generally how people deal with the strong death ball styles. I'm going to take one more question. Shit. There's a lot of questions that are like really high level and not that specific. Yes, from Philosopher. If the Oracle fails, what would the transition be? What would it be? I would say it depends. The question is, in what way did it fail? Did you lose the Oracle? In which case I'd be like, try to lose less Oracles. I would say that very usefully. What are ways that it can fail? I'm smoking a cigar like a big businessman. What would be the ways that it fails? Perhaps if he got some sort of Viking up to... I want to say that most of the ways in which it fails in a direct sense have to do with the ways in which it would fail would mean that any Blink Stalker aggression is going to be a lot stronger. Let's assume that our opponent's going mech. If he builds Vikings, well, okay, cool, he got fast Viking. Vikings suck against Blink Stalkers. I mean, maybe you could go for a medevac and try to do some drop harass, but Blink is amazing against drop harass. What if he built a lot of turrets? Well, he's not building units, so he's going to be weaker against drop harass. The only one would probably be Marines if he built the if he built a lot of Marines and you just couldn't get in because all that stuff was going on. I would probably emphasize the building of how do you say that? You know how Protoss players will, like, build one Colossus to force a Terran player to build some Vikings and then instantly transition into Zealot Archon? Like that sort of stuff. You can kind of do a similar thing where you build the Oracle and he has to leave his Marines at home to deal with it, and while he's doing that, you rush up to something like Colossus really fast. I would say that if your opponent is going for a big Marine heavy force, to try to do whatever tech transition you're trying to go for, just to do it a lot faster. That's the one thing that the Mothership Core and the Oracle are permitting Protosses to do in Heart of the Swarm, is just do other stuff a hell of a lot faster, because you just cast frickin' Purify on your Nexus, and it's just a giant death cannon. So, yeah. I would say that. And without any further ado, go play StarCraft. I'm going to go get sushi because it sounds good. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching. You're very beautiful. If you head on over to day9.tv, there are now forums, and you can sign up and chat with each other and just be generally awesome. And I'll be at Fireball Fest on Wednesday. Hope to see you at Fireball Fest. I'll be at MLG Dallas in November. And no matter what, even if you decide to stay at home and turn on your computer, watch Fright Week. I'll be playing Slenderman on Wednesday. Slenderman, Wenderman.